Clemmons, Doctor of Chiropractic at the Rock Health and Wellness Center, and you are listening to Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. It's Wednesday, January 3rd. We're coming to you right here from the Rock Health and Wellness Center studios and on 98.7 Walk by Faith Radio and 1420 AM Lubbock Christian Nation. So, I hope you guys have had a fantastic day. I hope everybody's back to work. I hope if you're not back to work, I hope you enjoyed the day. But we got back to work at the Rock today. When we've been rocking ever since 7:30 this morning. So we've had a great day. We've been super busy. We've been getting back. People have been getting adjusted. Been having a really good day today, and now we're excited about the show. It's our book review night. We're going to bring you a really cool book and it's got some information in it that you may not know or you may not have realized, but it's called the book, The Power of Habit is what it's called. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And so we're going to get into that book here shortly and talk about some habits. How can we build them? What exactly is a habit and how does it work neurologically? And what are some of the things that have been used against us in the power of habit? And what are some of the things that we can do to improve our lives through the power of habit? So hope you guys will enjoy that show. But like always, I like to just kind of give a recap of the day and some of the sentences. You know, it's really awesome getting to do this show because throughout the day, I'll have patients say things to me, and um, they'll just they'll say something, and I'll think, man, I need to talk about that tonight on the show. That it's over and over and over again, and it keeps coming back, and I know some of it, like I say all the time, some of it's repetitive, but the last one that I just had right before I got on air was we were talking about one of my great people that get adjusted. His mom's having a little bit of trouble. She's been having some anxiety, and she's almost 80 years old, and she's been having some panic attacks and some anxiety. And I just reminded him, I was like, hey, don't forget that anxiety is a right brain, right hemisphere issue, right? That remember what we always talk about: up and to the right, over to the left. That we intake our environment into our right hemisphere, and we need a certain amount of power to push that process through. It takes a certain amount of power. One of my young girls, she's probably I don't even know. She's 9, 10, 11 years old. I think maybe 12. Maybe she's not quite a teenager, I don't think. She asked me today when she was getting adjusted, Doc, how come you always use my left hand? Because I use the wrist and the elbow and the shoulder to work on that left hand to drive that right brain. And she gets adjusted every 2 weeks. And I tell her, I was like, look, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to drive the pathway that is the normal pathway, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish. And if you lose power, just like your phones, right? Our cell phones work perfectly fine, but there's a battery in there, and that battery has to be charged. And if that battery isn't charged, then what's going to happen is that battery is going to die. And when that battery dies, that perfectly good working cell phone, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with this cell phone at all, other than, well, I mean, not not philosophically what's wrong with it, but physically what's wrong with it. Nothing. It works just fine, right? But it's my batteries. It's at 72 right now. It's been sitting on my desk pretty much all day long. I hadn't even hardly used it, but it's sitting here and it's at 72. That's my personal cell phone. Our office cell phone, they both got charged exactly the same last night. They both had the exact same charge, but now my office cell phone's at 29% because Leslie's been up front and she's been burning this phone up all day long, right? So she's been working on and contacting our people and making sure that when they want to get adjusted and all that sort of thing. So she's been talking about, but this phone is 29% and this phone is 72% at the end of the day. So imagine right side, left side brain. Right side, left side brain, and you get to the end of the day, and now one of your hemispheres doesn't have the same amount of power as the other hemisphere does, and both of these hemispheres are now a little bit tired, but this one is more tired because it's been used up, right? Well, this is my right hemisphere. So if I've got this cell phone over here on my right hemisphere and it's lost some of its charge, then I don't have enough power to kick that information over to the left side. I got to get it out of this right brain and over here into this left side so that I can process my world in a calm, peaceful manner. And if I don't get that done, then what happens is it gets stuck over here in the right side and it increases my sympathetic response, my fight or flight response. It increases my stress. It increases my anxiety. It increases my panic attacks because I don't have enough juice. So, how do we get juice to the right hemisphere? We walk. The best thing we can do is walk. Get on our feet and walk. Get your feet moving. Get pressure feet to press against something. And then if you stand up, that is a lot of work for your brain. When you sit down, your brain can calm itself down. Like it's like, whew, that's easy. Like there's not much work. I could just lean back in this chair. There's not much work at all for me. I can just sit here, right? But if I get up on my feet, inside my body, boy, that creates a lot of firing going on in my brain, and that charges up. What I'm going to do as soon as I get home is I'm going to plug this phone in at 29%. I'm going to plug it in and charge it up, and I'm going to leave it charged up all night long. And in the morning, it's going to be back to 100%. I don't need any medication for this phone. I don't need any salve for this phone. I don't need any sort of counseling for this phone. I, there's it's a perfectly good phone. It's just lost its charge, right? Same thing with our brain. We don't need all that stuff for our brain. What we need is we need to get on our feet and move our feet. Now, when we get old and we get ailments and it hurts and we have bad legs and bad knees and bad hips and all those sort of things, and it hurts, it's harder to walk. And that causes problems for us, right? So when we're not on our feet, then we're not charging up our brain. So what can we do? One of the things we could do is move our eyes. Work your eyes up and back and forth. Like you're looking back and forth. Move your eyeballs. Move your eyeballs back and forth inside your head. Look up and to the left, and then move it back over to the right, then back over to the left. Move your eyes. That's a way that you can charge your brain. That's another thing that you can do. You can actually draw and color. One of my ladies today said one of the things that she started this year is no matter what it sounds like, she got watercolors and she started coloring. Well, it was right after I told her that I presented for her consideration that, hey, you might consider this year really doing some of the exercises that we do in the gym because it fires that right side brain. We can put those green glasses on your eyes. We can get you to move your eyes in a certain pattern. We can use the laser glasses in here to fire up your brain to get it going. And she's like, well, one thing I have done is I got some watercolors that I'm coloring. And so I pulled out the little form that I have right there on my desk, my computer stand in my office, and I pulled out the form. And the number one thing for right cortex, left cerebellum, the number one thing on the list was drawing and coloring. See, her innate intelligence was already knowing that she needed that. That wasn't some sort of random chance that she started doing watercolor. Her innate intelligence already knew that she needed some of that. So what did her brain do? Her brain started getting her to move towards things that it had an affinity for. And those are the blues and the greens that she's going, like this shirt I got going on today, right? That it's a right hemisphere driving kind of color, and it's a go color. And now if you can get that going for yourself, that's one way to deal with your anxiety. So just reminders, right? Just reminders that those are things that happen, but you can see how it was all throughout the day. Why are you using my left hand? Here, what are some of the things I can do to I'm already doing coloring. Yes. Hey, we got anxiety and panic attacks. Yes. That same like it permeates. It permeates through our society, and so that was one of the things today that I thought of, and that I thought was a big theme of the day. The other thing was, man, we got a bunch of congestion going on around here. Like we got head colds and fevers and all kinds of stuff like that. Right now, why? It's January 3rd. We just came off of a holiday. We just sit there and loaded up on sugar. Right? We're low on our vitamin D. All of those things, and it's like it's like, well, we should just put our coat on when we go outside. Yeah, maybe let's work on some of the fundamentals, right? So if you're not taking your vitamin D, you're this is a great time for if you need some vitamin C. Vitamin C is really good for your immune system. You can get some vitamin C working. You can get some zinc working if you need to get that for your immune system. Those are things that are helpful for your immune system, and that if you're dealing with some of this stuff, that it'll help you get through it. And you're not going to overdose on vitamin C in 24 or 48 hours. So, every couple thousand milligrams every couple of hours is not too much. You can really boost your immune system in a fast way by doing that. So, getting you some vitamin C is not too. You can 10, 12, 14, 16,000 milligrams in a day is not too much of vitamin C. You can get that and get your immune system, but you just can't take it all at once unless you do it from an IV standpoint. And that's what there's a new trend now. We got all these like vitamin IV shops that are all around. Everybody wants to take their vitamins in an IV form and get a boost, right? Well, if you're challenged, that might be effective. Might be an effective way to do it. But if you're not, and you don't want to go that route, what I'm saying is it's really easy to get 50,000, 100,000 milligrams of vitamin C through an IV drip. It just takes a bit of time. You got to kind of go slow to do that. But 25,000, 50,000 milligrams of vitamin C in an IV is not really unheard of. And so that you're not going to overdose with that vitamin C, and it's good for your immune system. And so sleep is good for your immune system. Sugar is the devil for your immune system. So if you're on that sugar, and you've gone through that whole Christmas with all that sugar, then here it comes. So those are some of the things those are some of the themes that kind of went throughout the entire day. And so I'll just kind of leave it at that. It was a good day. It was great. It was great to see everybody again. We don't usually take 10 days off here at the Rock Health and Wellness Center. We haven't taken 10 days off from the radio, but we have taken about 10 days off, and it was good, refreshing. I'm glad to be back. I'm excited about this year. I'm excited about the things that we're going to do here in the office, and I'm excited about the things that we're going to do on the show. So let's get to talking about the power of habit. So I picked this book up several years back. 2012 was the copyright, I believe, of the book. And man, there were some interesting things in the book that I didn't know about. Like I had no idea. And I wanted to just read you an excerpt from this of the book before we get into, because I've got an actual, I was so impressed with the book. I actually printed off a study guide and that's exactly what this is. This is the study guide to the book of the power of habit. But let me just read you this. This comes from Charles Duhigg himself on the power of habit. He says, one day in early 1900s, a prominent American businessman named Claude C. Hopkins was approached by an old friend with an amazing new creation, a minty, frothy toothpaste named Pepsodent that he promised was going to be huge. This is in the early 1900s, okay? Hopkins at the time, one of the nation's most famous advertising executives. He was the ad man who had convinced Americans to buy Schlitz beer by boasting that the company cleaned their bottles with live stream. I guess like they clean their bottles in a live stream, in quotes. He neglected to mention that every other company used the same method. He had seduced millions of women into purchasing Palmolive soap by proclaiming that Cleopatra had washed with it, despite the sputtering protest of outraged historians. But Hopkins' greatest contribution would be helping to create a national toothbrushing habit. Before Pepsodent, almost no Americans brushed their teeth. Now, think about this for a second. Before Pepsodent, in the early 1900s, almost no Americans brushed their teeth. No dentist recommended that you brush your teeth. No commercials said anything about brushing teeth. Like, it wasn't a thing that was happening. A decade after Hopkins' advertising campaigns, posters found that toothbrushing had become a daily ritual for more than half the population. So 10 years after he started, half the population is now brushing their teeth on a daily basis. Everyone from Shirley Temple to Clark Gable eventually bragged about a Pepsodent smile. Just put those big old teeth out there, right? I discovered this is coming from Mr. Duhigg himself. I discovered the story of Claude Hopkins a few years ago while reporting my book, The Power of Habit, which explores the science of habit formation. Today, Hopkins is almost totally forgotten. He shouldn't be. Hopkins was among the first to elucidate principles that even now influence how video games are designed, public health campaigns are managed, and that explain why some people effortlessly exercise every morning while others can't pass a box of donuts without automatically grabbing a jelly filled cruller. So, how did Hopkins start America brushing? By taking advantage of a quirk in the neurology of habits. It wouldn't be until almost a century later that medical schools and psychology labs would fully understand why habits exist and how they function. Today, we can create and change habits almost like flipping a switch. But there are historical outliers who seem to um, insinuate or accidentally stumble into these insights before anyone else. That's not insinuate. I don't know that word. Never heard of that word before. But they stumbled into these insights before anyone else. Hopkins created a toothbrushing habit by identifying a simple and obvious cue, delivering a clear reward, and most important, by creating a neurological craving. So there's three steps to this whole thing. Let me finish this thought. We'll get into some of those steps. And craving, it turns out, is what powers a habit. When Hopkins signed on to promote Pepsodent, he realized he needed to find a trigger for its daily use. He sat down with a pile of dental books. It was dry reading. He later wrote on his autobiography, but in the middle of one of the books, I found a reference to the mucin plaques on teeth, which I afterwards called the film, right? Do that right there with your tongue. Just rub your tongue over the front of your teeth. There's a film that covers the front of your teeth. It's completely normal and natural for you to have that film that covers the front of your teeth. It's completely normal and natural. Well, he found that film. He figured it out. That film. Man, my teeth feel dirty. They're not dirty. It's just a natural thing, right? That gave me an appealing idea. I resolved to advertise this toothpaste as a creator of beauty. Soon, cities were plastered with Pepsodent ads. Just run your tongue across your teeth. Read one. You'll you'll feel a film. That's what makes your teeth look off color and invites decay. Hogwash. He made that up right there. That deal was like it maybe after a long period of time, but he's just making that stowed up. So um, note how many pretty teeth are seen everywhere. Read another. Millions are using a new method of teeth cleaning. Why would any woman have dingy film on her teeth? Pepsodent removes the film. All habits, no matter how large or small, have three components. So this is where they actually get into the three components of um, of the habit. If you want to create a habit, so why am I talking about habits on the first book review night of the year, right? Well, it might be good for us to understand there is a science behind habits. There's an actual science behind the way a person creates a habit. So there's two ways we can look at it. Number one, we can look at it from the standpoint of how we created a bad habit. And then the other one is, what if we want to create a good habit? So we're starting the year right now, and some of us have some New Year's resolutions. That was another thing I was going to talk about. One of the kind of an interesting thing about this today, I ask everybody, have you got any big goals for 2024 or anything we can do to help you with your health, to improve your health? And it was really, I don't guess it was really eye opening, but it was not inspiring, I should say. It was not inspiring to see how many people, nothing, like no nothing. They didn't care. They don't have a thought about it. Hadn't even thought about it. Not interested in it. Like whatever. It's just another day, right? Just another day. And I was like, man, how depressing is that? Like it's not just another day. It's the greatest day. It's the best opportunity that we have. It's another day for us to turn our eyes forward on the thing that we want to go get and get after it, right? So anyway, I don't mean to get off of that, but we might be at the time of year that we actually want to make a good habit. We might actually want to say, okay, I want to start doing some things better. I want to start going to bed at a better time so I can get more sleep. Okay, what's keeping me from doing that? What is the habit? Man, I got this habit of looking at my phone and I just can't stop looking at my phone. And so time just flies by, and then all of a sudden it's 11 o'clock and it's already late. Right? Okay, what did you do? Well, here it is. It's the science. It's the science of habits. So all habits, no matter how large or small, have three components. According to neurological studies, there is a cue, a trigger for a particular behavior, a routine, which is the behavior itself, and a reward, which is how your brain decides whether to remember a habit for the future. When Hopkins identified tooth film, he found the cue that had existed for eons. Moreover, the reward that Hopkins was promising was hard to resist. Who doesn't want a prettier smile, particularly when all it takes is a quick brush with Pepsodent, right? Hey, I got the solution. I've got the problem. I've got the solution. I just got to get you in the habit, right? So let's break those things down right there. There's a cue, which is the it's the trigger. There's something that's going to trigger us to start the behavior. And then there's the routine, and that's the behavior. And then there's the reward that goes along with it. So those three things are the trigger, the routine, and the reward. And so what he does is he does a really good job of breaking that down. And so this is what he did. When Hopkins identified the tooth film, he found a cue that existed for eons. We've always had that film on our teeth. It's been that way forever. It doesn't mean our teeth are breaking down. It's just that film has been on our teeth. So he had to create some sort of reward. 3 weeks after the first Pepsodent ad campaign, demand for the toothpaste exploded. There were so many orders that the company couldn't keep up. In 3 years, the product went international. Within a decade, Pepsodent was one of the top sellers around the globe. I made for myself $1 million on Pepsodent, Hopkins wrote a few years after the product appeared on the shelves. The key, he said, was that he grounded his advertising campaign in two basic rules. Number one, First, find a simple and obvious cue. Second, clearly define the reward. Even today, Hopkins rules are samples of marketing textbooks. They're cited in boardrooms, advertising offices, and business school classrooms. But that's not the full explanation of why Pepsodent was successful. There's another rule that even Hopkins at the time didn't understand. So there's something that cues us to do something. There's something that makes us start this routine. And then we're going to get into this routine, and then we're going to get that reward at the end. And I don't know, he's about to get into. Let's keep going. Um, Hang on a second. Let me see what kind of time we got. Well, we're gonna just take a second. We're just about to come up on our first break, and so it was really interesting how many things were in this Power of Habit book that I didn't know about. The other one was Febreze, and Febreze. If you've ever had any Febreze on the shelf, the makers of Febreze spent a lot of money to make this big campaign. He put this team together. They were going to do this big campaign on Febreze, and they were trying to sell it as the scientific part of it. How amazing it was that it neutralized smells, and they created this big campaign to neutralize these smells. And what it just about the whole thing crashed and burned. And when we get back from the break, I'll break the rest of this down. I'll get into the neuroscience of a habit and what exactly happens inside our brain and some of the things that are going on, and then um, how we can what tricks have been used upon us to create habits like Starbucks and toothpaste and washing our hair. So we'll be right back. Yeah, so they spent like millions of dollars on Febreze, and they were trying to sell it for the science of it. They were trying to say, "Hey, look, you should use this Febreze because it can just neutralize odors all at once." If you've got if you've got some sort of pet, or you've got there's a smoker in your house, or there's something that you need to neutralize some odors with, you can use that Febreze. And they almost went bankrupt. That almost crashed. The team almost got fired. It was all the way down. They gave them one more shot. They said, "You got to figure this out." And what they did is they went back to that reward. They went from cue to reward, and they added in a fragrance. Because at first, Febreze had no fragrance at all. And so they added in a fragrance to the Febreze, and it sold like crazy. Because now all of a sudden, what they sold was the fresh smell of your sheet, the fresh smell of your room, of your curtains, or whatever. They gave you this. They tied. Oh man, that smells awful. To that's the cue, and they tied it into the reward at the end, and that was how they created the habit right there. It's very interesting, and then it turned out to be a multi-million dollar idea, or $1 billion idea. I don't know exactly what the numbers were, but it just about failed until they got that reward, and they sold the beach, not the airplane flight. Remember, we talked about that a few weeks ago. I did that same thing. I spend too much time talking about the airplane flight and not about the beach on the vacation. And I even mentioned that to Dr. Fraley last week when we had our phone call last Friday. I told him that story about me listening to those guys on that podcast, and and talking about the beach. And that's what the guys on the podcast told me. They said, "Hey, look, don't spend all your time telling people about the plane ride. They just want to know about the beach, what it's going to feel like when they get there." And Dr. Crowley thought that was great. He's like, "Man, that's some good stuff right there." Because sometimes in our deal, we want you to know so much about what's going on with your body, because we feel like we figured out some of the things that are going on with your body. We just want to share that with you. And what I've really come to find out is that there's a lot of times you don't care. You're not interested in the plane ride. You want to know about the beach. It's human nature. Okay, everybody, we're back. This is Jason Clemmons, and this is Life with Jason Clemmons, DC. And it's January 3rd, Wednesday, our book review night, and we're breaking down The Power of Habit. So, and this is by Charles Duhigg. Charles was he writes for the New Yorker magazine. He was a reporter for the New York Times. Um, it's not a political statement. It's just a conversation, right? So about the book, he wrote a book, and I think there's some things in there that we really could learn and understand. So let's go back to his little excerpt right here. So he talked about, says, for the first time, I spoke to Wolfram Schultz, a professor of neuroscience at the University of Cambridge. I kept thinking of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Schultz is from Austria and sounds a lot like the Terminator. If that cyborg had been a member of the Royal Society of Science. The reason I thought I sought out Schultz was because of his experiments. 80 years later, explained why Pepsodent became a hit and why so many other habits seem overpowering to the people in their sway. Schultz's specialty is exploring how we learn. In particular, a few years ago, Schultz became interested in an 8-pound macaque monkey with hazel eyes named Julio. Schultz's assistant had inserted a very thin electrode in Julio's brain that allowed them to observe the monkey's neuronal activity as it occurred. So um, they were doing some studies there on this monkey with that could measure their brain. One day, Schultz positioned Julio in a dimly lit room and turned on a computer monitor. Julio's job was to touch a lever whenever colored shapes appeared on the screen. If Julio touched the lever, a drop of blackberry juice would run down the tube hanging from the ceiling and onto Julio's lips. Julio liked blackberry juice. At first, Julio was only mildly interested in what had happened on the screen, but once the first dose of juice arrived, the monkey became very focused. As Julio came to understand that the shapes on the screen were a cue for a routine, touch the lever, that resulted in a reward, blackberry juice. So there was a cue, the shapes on the screen, to get him to get into a routine of touching the lever, and then that blackberry juice was the reward. He started staring at the screen with laser-like intensity. When that reward was there, man, that got his attention. He's like, I want some of that blackberry juice. As Schultz monitored the activity within Julio's brain, he saw a pattern emerge. Whenever Julio received his reward, his brain activity would spike in a manner that suggests he was experiencing happiness. A transcript of the neurological activity shows what it looks like when when a monkey's brain is, in essence, I got reward. Schultz took Julio through the same experiment again and again. As the monkey became more and more practiced at the behavior, as touching the lever whenever Julio saw the shapes became a habit, Schultz saw a neurological change occur. When the monkey's brain began anticipating the blackberry juice, Schultz probes started to record the I got a reward pattern the instant Julio saw the shapes on the screen before the juice arrived. That's a really big point. In the beginning, he would see the cue, do the routine, then get the reward. And then when he got the reward, his brain would light up. But once he started practicing and getting really good at it, now he would see the cue, he would and do a routine, and then now he's anticipating the reward. In other words, the shapes on the monitor had become a cue, not just for pulling a lever, but also for a pleasure response inside the monkey's brain. When Schultz adjusted the experiment, then Schultz adjusted the experiment. Previously, Julio had received juice as soon as he touched the lever. Now, sometimes the juice didn't arrive at all, even if Julio performed correctly, or it would arrive after a slight delay, or it would be watered down until it was only half sweet. When that happened, Julio would get angry or become mopey. And within Julio's brain, Schultz watched a new pattern emerge, craving. When Julio anticipated juice but didn't receive it, a neurological pattern associated with desire and frustration erupted. When Julio saw a cue, he started to anticipate a juicy-filled joy. But if the juice didn't arrive, that joy became a craving that, if unsatisfied, drove Julio to anger or depression. Now, this is all about our little Dr. Lustig left brain dopamine um, pie chart, not pie chart, graph, right? Our bell curve. Remember what we talked about with that whole bell curve? Because what he was getting was dopamine from that left brain. I'll keep going. The scientists say it's how habits emerge and why they are so powerful. They create neurological craving. Most of the time, these cravings emerge so gradually that we're not really aware that they exist. Remember, I started off with one little Reese's cup. And then when we were kids, we used to could have a single. Just everybody in the kindergarten get one Reese's cup. Okay, I'll just get one single Reese's cup. And then what happens? Now I got to have two Reese's cups. And then I got to have four Reese's cups. Then I got to have a bag of Reese's cups, right? The reason I got to do that is because I'm training my brain in that dopamine. I'm down regulating that left side hemisphere that's really, really leaning towards dopamine. It has an affinity for dopamine. And it's hard to control externally my dopamine. And this is exactly what's happening right here in the power of habit. This, scientists say, is how habits emerge and why they are so powerful. They create neurological cravings. Most of the times, these cravings emerge so gradually that we're not aware they exist. But as our brains start to associate certain cues, a donut box, with certain rewards, yummy jelly, a subconscious craving emerges. And so whenever we see the Dunkin' Donuts container in the break room, we start craving a donut, even if it's just moments before we weren't hungry at all. Remember, we've talked about this multiple times. Driving down the highway, minding my own business, listening to George Strait on the radio, singing right along, having me a fantastic little concert all by myself. And then what did I see on a billboard? I see that big old Blizzard sign, right? That Dairy Queen Blizzard on that billboard. What happens? I wasn't even thinking about a blizzard until I saw that Blizzard sign. And then all of a sudden, man, I got to have a Blizzard. I got a craving for that because I had a cue. I had a something that cued that thought in my brain. And I ate so many Blizzards that I already knew that I was fixing to tie those two things together, right? It's like that's exactly what goes on in our brain, and that, man, it's tough. So, and that's what I keep saying about like the whole crumble cookie thing, right? The crumble cookie, the pink box, the whole idea. They're gonna send out the ads in the middle of the week, and now we've got the app, so we're gonna know. Yeah, I'm guilty. My family is a crumble cookie addicts. Yes, we were 22 months ago. Yesterday, we were crumble cookie addicts. Hadn't had a crumble cookie in 22 months, but we used to be an addict. And what were we doing? We were getting manipulated by the science of habits by sending out in the middle of the week the new flavors, right? These are the ones that came out this week. They're coming out this week. So what do? It cues us. And where we start thinking about? What are we building up? We're building up dopamine. We're building up dopamine. We're building up dopamine. And what happened to Julio the monkey, right? If you press the lever and he didn't get what he wanted, he became anger, angry and depressed. Remember the guy taking his wife out for a date? Remember that conversation we had about that whole deal? That right there is when all of a sudden your right brain that has the affinity for adrenaline, that the epinephrine, that whole right side adrenaline problem, right? We have an affinity for adrenaline on the right side. We have an affinity for dopamine on the left side. And that dopamine is rising, that dopamine is rising, that dopamine is rising. And then all of a sudden we realize that reward's not going to happen. And we get a crash of dopamine on the left side. Bam. We get an increased amount of adrenaline on the right side. And what do we go into? Anger and depression. We get violent or pouty or moody or fussy or whatever, right? Because we didn't get our cookie, because we wanted our cookie, right? That's got a little intense. We're just talking about habits. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so intense, but So let me get back to it. Something similar, it turned out, was happening when people start using Pepsodent. About a decade after Pepsodent went on sale, competing toothpaste companies launched a massive project to figure out why it was such a success. Eventually, they tripped over something interesting: the Pepsodent recipe. Unlike other toothpaste of that period, Pepsodent contains citric acid as well as doses of mint oil and other relatively exotic chemicals. They put mint oil in there. That's the same reason they put sodium lauryl sulfate in there. That's the same thing they put in your shampoo that makes your shampoo bubble up, makes our shampoo bubble up. That's what's in our toothpaste that makes it have that foam right there. But because we associate that thing together. Pepsodent's inventor had used those ingredients to make his toothpaste taste minty and to make sure that paste wouldn't become gluey as it sat on the shelves. But it was that minty part that really kicked us into gear. But those chemicals had another unanticipated effect as well. They're irritants that create a tingling sensation on the tongue and gums. When researchers at competing companies started interviewing customers, they found that people said if they forgot to use Pepsodent, they realized their mistake because they missed that cool, tingling sensation in their mouths. They expected, they craved that slight irritation. If it wasn't there, their mouths didn't feel clean. Claude Hopkins, it turns out, wasn't just selling beautiful teeth, he was selling a sensation. Once people craved that cool tingling, once they equated it with cleanliness, brushing became a habit. Hopkins' success was driven by the same factors that caused Julio the monkey to touch the lever. Now, man, think about that for a second. Brushing our teeth did not come from dentists. It did not come from doctors. It did not come from healthcare. It had nothing to do with it at all. Brushing our teeth. Some of us do it 2 or 3 times a day. We brush our teeth. Brushing our teeth had nothing to do with health and wellness. It had nothing to do. It came from an advertiser who was trying to make money. And so he figured out the science of it. He figured out how to put something in there in the toothpaste that created irritation, that would cause some irritation in there. And then he would just top it off with a little mint, because now you had the film on your teeth. That was your cue. You created the routine by brushing your teeth, and the brushing of the teeth had the irritation of it that also had the mint, which also had the foam, the foaming up of the toothpaste. Those three things right there made you feel like that was what was happening. That's how you get your teeth clean. That's how you get rid of that film. But you can do that same exact thing if you take your finger and just rub your finger across your teeth right there. You can feel how that film goes away. Like it changes. You could just like our whole toothpaste could just be our finger. Our whole toothbrushing experience. We could wipe that film off, rub our tongue across our teeth, and brush our teeth with our finger. But no one's going to do that. How stupid is that? Plus, it's not near as fun because it's not near logically as sound, right? Like now that we've gotten into the neurology of the whole thing, that's where, man, there's a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of stuff that like Starbucks, Olive Garden, Red Lobster, all those guys got into predictive analysis. Like they've spent millions and millions of dollars. The Starbucks cup is the same cup at every Starbucks everywhere in the world. You get the cup, you get the sleeve, that you get the lid, you get the stopper, and they put lots of money into that process because they know, based on this whole process right here, I'm going to get addicted to that feel of that cup. You ever bought an iPhone? You ever bought an iPhone or an Apple product? They come in these expensive boxes. Part of the expense of these iPhones the reason they're $1,100 or $700 and $900 is because the box that they come in is expensive. Like they don't use a cheap sorry box to put that in because they know that there's a reward for that. There's a neurological, man, this has got to be a valuable piece of equipment because it comes in such a amazing box. It's soft, like the box texture is actually soft on an iPhone or an iPad or when you buy a new laptop or something like that. Like it comes in a special box just for that reason right there. um, there's all kinds of things that those habits that we have. So it's irritating a little bit. It's irritating when you can realize that you're being manipulated by so many factors. Like there's so many factors that are going on that are manipulating us into creating a habit, and they're setting us on autopilot, and we're not even really conscious of what we're doing. We're not even really thinking about the fact that we're being manipulated with food. Food companies are doing that all the time. Why do you think that Reese's comes in that bright orange thing? Why do we have this whole peanut butter and chocolate thing mixed together? Like, man, the reward, oh, it's peanut butter and chocolate. Those are the best two things in the world that you can mix together, right? Now, we all know that's not true. Peanut butter is high in omega-6 fatty acids. It's going to create inflammation. We know that for a fact. It's overloaded. 4,400 to 1 peanuts are. You're going to get too much inflammation. And then you're going to add sugar on top of the inflammation that's coming in that chocolate, that milk chocolate that's along with it. There's not a that's see when the challenging part with it is that when I start talking about the plane ride to the vacation spot, the people that I'm talking to, all they want to know about is the beach. You're like, dude, we're standing on the beach. We're standing here feeling the sun on our face and the water and that's washing over our feet and the sand between our toes. We're sitting here on this beautiful beach, and you're wanting to tell us about that there was something wrong with the plane flight. And it's like, it's tough. So what do you got to do? You got to consciously be aware of the surroundings that you got your body in. You got to consciously think about that. If you want to break some of those habits, you've got to you, you've got to get a why big enough to break the neurology of the manipulation that you've been through for your entire life. It's been going on, and there's not a person alive on this planet today that is hasn't been subjected to this kind of manipulation in some of these areas. And when it comes to exercise, and it becomes to nutrition, and it becomes to sleep, and it becomes now that those you don't think Instagram and Facebook and YouTube have studied the living heck out of these things, these habits. They know how it is to give you that reels. How long can you go watching reels and shorts, right? We could do that forever and ever and ever, just sit there and look at our phones. So if we want to make sure that we're breaking some of those habits, we gotta pay attention. So he says here, want to craft a new eating habit? When researchers affiliated it with National Weight Control Register, a project involving more than 6,000 people who have lost more than 30 pounds, looked at the habits of successful dieters. They found that 78% of them ate breakfast every morning, a meal cued by a time of day. But most of the successful dieters also envisioned a specific reward for sticking with their diet. They envisioned their why, right? A bikini that they wanted to wear or a sense of pride that they felt when they stepped on the scales each day. They focused on the craving when temptation arose, cultivating it into a mild obsession, and researchers found it crowded out temptations. We said it last night, lead me not into temptation, right? Well, by making sure that I've got direction and I have a goal and I have a conscious goal. Think about what's happening right here. This is done with more than 6,000 people. But most of the successful dieters also envisioned a specific reward for sticking with their diet. It's not just about and I think this is. Let me rephrase it. or go back, a bikini they wanted to wear, or the sense of pride they felt when they stepped on the scale each day. I just challenge you, and I have multiple times already. I just challenge you when you're trying to build yourself a new reward to really start to think about um, making it bigger. I just don't know, or I guess I shouldn't say this because each person each person has their own motivating factor, and your motivating factor might be a bikini, and your motivating factor might be the idea that you feel good, you have a sense of pride by what you're doing. Okay, if you have that sort of mentality, then that's going to work out great for you. I just think it's super important. I really do think, based on my personal experience, I think it's super important to be honest with yourself, not let someone else project on top of you what that craving might be, what that why might be. If you say, "Well, I think I should lose 10 pounds," and you don't really believe that you should lose 10 pounds, then I don't think that's a strong enough reward to overcome the temptation that's going to come your way. I think you have to really, really determine that you're going to win. And it was fabulous for me because it was it was a it was the rekindling of competition. It was I went, shoot, 20 something years, 23 years without competing, and can't believe it, but I did it. Whatever, however many, I don't remember, what, 20 something years, 20 years. 1999, I was coaching football. That was the last year I really was competitive, super competitive. And then from 1999 to 2019, so 20 years. But what started it back was something that going to my, I've told you that's going to my reunion and seeing the pictures of my reunion and making the charts, and then coming on this sugar thing was being competitive, and then one thing led to another, and that really got me there. And it's like now I've rekindled the juices of competition. Now I'm so excited about every single day now, because now I'm trying to win the day. Like that's on my phone. I've had it on my phone, my screensaver, for several. It says "win the day." It's like I think I put it on there last year. Win the day. It's like, come on, man, compete and do that. So let's finish it up for a run out of time. I got about 2 minutes left. So what are some of the things we want to create a cue? We want to create a cue um, that sets us going in the direction we want to go. What is it that's going to get me to go to bed at a certain time? What is that cue that I can get to say, hey, I got to get some sleep tonight. I got to get some sleep because it's so important for tomorrow that I got to get some sleep. Why is it important? Because I'm trying to compete and win. Alabama and Michigan played, and Mount Michigan and Washington are going to play on Monday night for the national championship. They're going to compete at a high level on Monday. Well, I'm competing with myself now every single day that way. Like I'm trying to compete every Monday through Friday plus Saturday plus Sunday afternoon. Like it's like 7 days a week now to compete. That's where I'm at and it's fun. It's fun to compete. So I'm competing. It's way more fun than looking at my phone. So I got to say, all right, I got to get some sleep tonight. I got to put this phone down. So that's my cue. I've got to find something that cues me to put my phone down and go to sleep. Then once I get to start that, then I have to start building that craving about that routine, and then I've got to reward myself in the morning. When the morning comes and I've gotten my 8 hours of sleep, I need to find some sort of reward to reward my brain. Give myself a high five. Say something inspiring to myself. Get just something that I can get going that will start that cue, routine, reward. I got to get that reward at the end to make sure I got my sleep so that I'm ready to go the next day. Think about that. Try it on. We're running out of time, but Try on some of that right there. See if it becomes habit. Find a cue, get in a routine, and then give yourself a reward for what you're doing. And if you can try that, you might be able to gain some really good habits that will carry you into 2024 and really change your health. I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a great book. It's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and you can pick it up and learn some stuff if you'd like to. You guys have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow night at 6.